Welcome back to another serving of hot chips. Amy,
Yes.
what is on today's menu?
Today on the menu, we have a discussion about games. We never have that.
No, it's the
And
first time.
should reviews have a number score?
Like out of 10.
Out of 10? Or
Any-
out
any
of
number.
100? Yeah.
Any number.
100, yeah. 1,000?
Some of them have 5 stars. And they cheat by having half stars, so it really is out of 10.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you're the one that feels, I think, the most passionate about this.
No, I just think I have an interesting opinion on this. that kind of goes against the norm.
Right.
As a reader and consumer of review scores, I like the fact that they have a number. I think the numbers are good for those reading it, and it's also good because it holds the reviewer accountable.
Right.
Like, I feel like you could just waffle on about your opinions and not say if you liked the game or not.
Right.
But like having a set in stone, I think this game is a blah 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 out of 10, holds you to a certain point of view.
Right. See, we have the complete opposite opinions. And as a close friend of yours for a while now, I'm able to say that I've seen you be really excited for a game, read the review and it be a low score, and then not even play it.
Yeah.
Whereas that would never happen to me. I care not for someone's opinion. Like I do, like I read them, but it will never impact my buying decision.
Because I like from my experience, this goes with both games, movies, and television. If I usually agree with a critic's opinion, like even if I hadn't seen it, like I'm like if I come away from a movie and don't like it, I could have saved myself money because I know that a critic wouldn't have liked that movie as well.
But then you've just never had the experience of seeing
I
it.
have had that experience.
What? You haven't
What?
seen it?
No, I didn't want to see it. I wasted
But
my money.
You don't know.
You could have been...
I didn't know, but I could have known.
But there
I
are
could
there
have
are,
known.
there are outliers, right? What if you just checked like one or two reviews, saw that they had low scores, but then 3 or 4 reviews had nice high scores?
So this is it. I don't just take one. I don't look at one review.
Yeah.
I usually do go around. I'll check Metacritic. I'll look at different reviews. I'll give
Right.
a good example of that. And this is kind of an outlier because I had actually played this game before it was reviewed because it was in beta for a long time. Heroes of the Storm.
Right.
Heroes of the Storm is a good game. I would give that game like an 8 or something, like a solid 8.
Okay.
Like as a good game. I think most critics would agree with that.
Yeah.
Apart from one critic on IGN who gave it like a 6.2 or something ridiculous and was very negative towards that. And that was like an outlier in those review scores.
But you could be an outlier yourself. Everyone could be giving it a nice high score. So you're like, I'm going to buy this game that I had no interest in before because it got high scores. You buy it and you hate it. There is that possibility.
Yeah,
Metal
definitely. I like Metal Gear.
Do you?
So much
How
that you've
far
played
through it are
like
you?
45 minutes.
I played that game for hours.
No,
There's been hours of it.
At
there is
least
so
2 of
little.
them.
Hours of it.
As we've had good discussions about it, you've seen nothing in that game. And as from what that game offers, you've seen so little. You've barely played the game. That's what I can easily say, having played.
And also, we're very not excited. Then read the reviews and was like, get in the game for sure.
Yeah. And then the game was awesome.
But yeah,
Yeah. That's a different thing, right? Because the thing with the Metal Gear is that is a game you have to invest so much time
Okay,
in.
anyway, you don't have to defend your Metal Gear, love or not love.
So the other way, I guess what I'm saying is if you are an outlier for some games, maybe it's a game you were excited for, you saw something in all the footage, all the previews that you're like, this is going to interest me, all the reviews come out and pan it, so you no longer pick it up. What if you had picked it up and enjoyed it? You're missing out on this thing that you were excited about because other random people, and that's all they are, they're just random people that have been doing it a long time.
Giving their opinion.
Didn't like
No,
it.
but I'm
Maybe
happy
it
with
was
that.
reviewed, and this is something that I've dealt with a lot, having reviewed for like 16 years now. Is that quite often you get a game and you need to review it in a week, and it might be a game that needs 3 weeks worth of playing, and you have to cram that in. You're looking for things that your average consumer is not going to look at. You can see all of these things that are technically wrong with it, and you're not playing it in an ideal situation that your average consumer is going to play it, and you pan it.
Yeah.
And then
But that's
and
like...
then you come back to it maybe 6 months later and you're like, maybe I'm going to revisit it and actually play it properly. And it turns out to be a relatively good game.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think that's the lesser case scenario.
I think you'd be
Like,
surprised.
the world I would rather live in
Yeah.
is the world where I see a review score
Yeah.
and it warns me away from a bad purchasing decision. So I'm trying to think of a game.
See, if a game got a bad review, I'd almost be more inclined to buy it.
That's get out.
Yeah.
That's not what they're for.
Because
Well, that's a bit weird.
Because with me, there's just games that I'm so solidly interested in, and games that I'm like, I never want to play that, and I know that even if those games get a bad review, I'm probably gonna like them. And 9 times out of 10, the games I do like do get really bad reviews.
That's weird though. So
I make my own decisions.
I live in a world now where maybe I miss out on playing a game I would have liked because I read a review and took it seriously and it was a bad review.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've also not picked up games I would have hated because they had, reviews that helped me as
But
a
neither
consumer.
have I. Maybe I just better know myself.
So to get back to the topic though, is you think reviews deserve to have scores? You need
Yeah.
to have the scores.
Yeah. And I think it's up to the consumer to not read too much into the scores, but I know if I see anything that's like 7 to 8, like if it's 7 to 8, I know that if it's a game that I was interested in, I should probably get it. If it's an 8, like if anything that's an 8 point anything, I know that game is solid and it's pretty much what people expected from it.
Right.
Anything that's 9 or higher, then I think, oh shit, like what did this game do so right? And I'll probably investigate a bit more into that. The same goes for if it's 6 to 7,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what did this game do wrong to miss out on that mid-range sweet spot? So I'll investigate more into that as well. So it's not that I make my whole purchasing decision on the back of that. If I did, like if there was a game I was really interested in and it was 6.2, I wouldn't go, nah. I'd go, I need to look more into that.
All right. So to extend on that, you've got all of these games that come out, and because of the expectations, they end up with like 10s. So you've got Uncharted, you've got Zelda games that are always hitting 10s out of 10s, no matter what. And then months later, or even like take Skyward Sword, for example, something that you've mentioned to me before, is it received all of these 10s. And as a Zelda fan who didn't review it but just played it, it didn't deserve those 10s.
No.
Right? But from a Metacritic point of view, it's just getting 10s. So someone who may not be interested in it might look at all these scores and go, sweet, I'm going to grab that. They may not go into the actual text of the review to see, oh, actually, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But we're going to give it a 10 because it's Zelda. Which most of these reviews do go into what's wrong with it in the text. But they end up with that final score of that 10 anyway.
Yeah.
I guess really you just need to be, people need to read it as well.
Yeah. And you do have buffer there.
Yeah.
Like, if I saw a game that was like a 10, I knew nothing about it and I bought it because it's a 10. And I think it's like not a 10, but it's probably still a really good game. Like, I'm not super disappointed. Like, there are games that are like that. I think Mass Effect 3, Zelda, as you mentioned. I think Uncharted 3 was also well overhyped in terms of its ratings. Like, those games, picking up any of those games, you're not going to be disappointed. You can disagree it's not a 10, and it's your opinion to do so. But you're never going to be like, oh shit, this game was like a 2,
Yeah. I think from my point of view, I don't understand why you need to give a score. Just tell the people what the pros and the cons are of the game. And if that matches with what you like and dislike in games, sweet, then it's probably for you. You can summarize the big 6 to 1,000 word review in a better system than just giving it a number. And again, it comes down to because people compare numbers. They're like,
That's the
this
problem,
game got
right?
a 9. Why did that game get a 10? It's worse for these reasons.
See, no, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
not like a scale.
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
use the numbers as a grade of like, it's what people expected.
Yeah.
It's above what people expected. The game didn't perform up to expectations.
Yeah.
Like that's the information that I want to know.
Yeah,
I want to
think that's
know
fair.
like if I was going to buy a game I've been excited for, say it was, what's that one that just came out? Battleborn. Say I was excited to play Battleborn. I want to know, boom, I want that game to hit my sweet spot of a 8, somewhere in the 8s to know that it's everything we expected. And then it hits like a 6.9. I'm like, shit, like that game did not live up to expectations.
Right. Taking it on a different angle here, there are publishers out there that say to their development teams, if you end up with a Metacritic score of this or higher, you guys will get bonuses. Right? So that is a system
Really?
that is out there. I have seen that happen, and I have come from knowing that exists. And so you've got these...
didn't know that.
It becomes part of the publisher's marketing scheme to ensure that they get 8s, 9s, and 10s. Because it means extra sales. People look at those numbers and they know, because they get those numbers, that has a direct impact on sales. So reviews are very much part of the marketing budget of a publisher. There's a reason they give out press kits. There's a reason they sweeten the deal with certain websites to make sure that at the end, Even if it's an average game, that Zelda game's going to get a 10. That Uncharted game's going to get a 10. It's going to have an impact on the sales.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the websites that don't go for these numbers, I like those a bit more because I think they're more consumer friendly reviews than they are publisher friendly reviews. It's a less of a draw. What do you think of that side of things?
Yeah, it's we kind of consider the market here as well of the I'm just going to the versus the opinions ones now.
Sure.
There is like in-depth consumers that know a lot about industry that are gonna be really involved with those opinion ones, and maybe even like communicate with the provider and be like the provider of the content to be like, oh yeah, I like what you're saying, I agree with this guy's opinion, let's get involved. And then you've got Mr. Shopping on the shelf seeing like, 9.10 IGN, like going from case to case looking at these numbers.
Yeah.
And they're like using that to sell like games in store and on that shelf.
Or
and
the
I
mother
think-
that goes and is like, "What's popular in video games today?"
and it's easy for us. It's easy for us to underestimate how many
kids play.
purchasing decisions are made at the point of sale.
Yeah.
Like it's a ridiculously high amount of people will walk into that shop and just buy off the shelf.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a reason that big marketing budgets correlate with high sales,
Yeah.
right? There is that correlation.
Oh hell yeah.
And it's the same with reviews and stuff. You get the high ratings, people are just going to see the number. It's going to be much easier to promote something that has a 10 out of 10 from IGN on the poster than it is to sell something that gets a 7.9. No one's going to advertise that 7.9.
No.
And you see it help out a bunch. Like you see games like don't have big marketing budgets as well. I think back to Ni no Kuni. When that game hit the shelves and it was getting like 9s and 10s everywhere, and shops were selling out and had to keep buying more and more orders in of this game because the reviews were so good.
Yeah.
And that game didn't have $1 billion marketing budget, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think about wine and the way I go to the supermarket and look for like the won an award sticker, and then I'm like, well, it must be good. There must be people who buy video games like that. Like, just,
definitely.
Is there a website that gives ratings out of 10 to wine?
Yeah, there's
Yeah?
lots of different. It's actually the same exact kind of ecosystem. So you've got lots of different people grading these things in different ways, and then you've got New World being like, we do our own awards, and obviously they only award awards to the New World wines. So it's like totally biased. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on review scores there? Do you look at review scores, Theo?
I do, but I use them in a very different way. Like, hearing what you've said, and I've heard some of these stories before and I've read about them, I think as a thing for the industry, for the gaming industry in general, and for consumers in general, I think scores are a bad idea. They're very negative, and they encourage negative reactions, like you were talking about in terms of development studios, and it encourages negative purchasing behaviors where people can influence what the scores are, and people will buy it based on that score. You know, sheeple do exist. There are large amounts of them, and they're not necessarily bad because they just don't have time to go through the reviews and actually do things. They need that snap decision making. But I use reviews very differently in terms of it acts as a summary, and it works very well with what you were saying before. I like review scores for me watching content and reading content because it acts as a good summary of general quality. And it's like you can give someone a list of pros and cons, but that is a subjective list of what somebody thinks a pro and a con is, but it's not weighing that pro and a con against each other, which I think is really powerful for the score. You say, if it is above an 8, yes, all the mechanics kind of work and it kind of flows together, and the negatives can be outweighed by those positives. So you can look at those negatives that they displayed in the actual review. There's something that you read or you saw, and you can say, okay, so those don't actually matter as much to that kind of person compared to the pros that they mentioned. And it's just a quicker, easier way of summing it all out without confusing somebody with too many words or too many lists or things like that.
So you're saying sort of like maybe a 7 to an 8 is basically like you're going to get a good experience.
Yeah.
And a 9 and a 10 might be like you're going to get a good and polished experience.
Yeah.
It's probably
it's not even experience wise. It's just that the elements of the game work together to outweigh its negatives. And I wouldn't say that results in a good experience. I'd say that if you now think that the game is fantastic, then you know all the elements within the game work well together, then it'll probably relate to you. And again, it's different for different reviewers, so those scores mean different things in comparison to what they're weighing
That's the
together.
biggest problem, right? Like the numbers are just arbitrary because everyone's not used. There's not like a scale where it's like gymnastics. You get this many points for these things. You know, it's like
a 5 is not an average game, right?
No.
Not even close.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Five
You
may
want-
may
No
as well
one's
be
buying
the
a
serial
five.
starts.
Dead game,
Yeah.
You need to be hitting the 8s. Like that 8s is probably like the bell curve would be like 8.
Yeah.
And then it would go back down again.
And I think that's why I prefer the 5 stars instead of going into out of 10 or
I
out
like
of
5
100.
stars much
Oh, really?
better.
Because like 100, you're kind of like, what's the difference between an 82 and an 83? You know, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
really, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And it's almost the same. Like, is a 4? How much better is a 4.5 out of a 4
Yeah.
over a 4, or versus an 8 versus
when
a
it,
9?
when it comes down to like a 4 and a 4.5 or an 8 and a 9, it all just becomes objective at that point. Like,
Yeah,
it all just becomes opinion. Like, and I don't really care as much about the opinion.
Yeah.
I just want to know,
I only care about
was
the
this game to the standard that the publisher said it was?
Right.
And then I can form my own opinions.
Yeah, I gotta say this is why I like the way we review games, because it's not just like a rating out of 10 or a 5 or anything like that. We say one person says whether it's worthwhile to buy,
Yeah.
and then you've got the backing or not of 2 other people. You've kind of, it gives a way more of a valid or
Yeah.
reason to
Overview.
purchasing it.
I mean,
yeah.
the Alienation one we did recently was a good example of this, where we're like, that game is great. Like, it's 100% like what the developer said it was.
Yeah.
Probably rated well.
And it probably
rated
did rate very well, yeah.
But, you know, if you just don't have the time or the right environment for it, you know, then you need to consider, like, if it's worth your time.
yeah.
Totally.
And yeah, so I think there's something to a smaller amount of numbers. If you're going to have a number system, I think there's kind of, because like you said, a 5 isn't an average. It's basically, when you're talking
0.
about 10, it's saying you're not going to buy this.
Yeah.
Very few people are. The people who are buying
0,
this
7, 8,
don't know what the game is. It's a mum buying a game for their kid, or a parent buying their game for a kid, and the kid's going to play it because it's the only game they've got. But really, they're probably not going to remember it in the long run. Versus, like, the real meat of it is almost that 5 to 10 mark. It's 5 is like, don't buy it, but then you've got like a 7 or 8 is like, you know, or 7 maybe is kind of you're not going to hate it if you buy it, and then above that is that you're probably going to love it.
And I feel the 5 on a 10 scale is where the first star starts.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. It should
Totally.
be.
They managed
Yeah.
to
Totally
build the
agree.
game.
It's
Yeah.
literally what it is.
Half
Well
star,
done.
half star, 5 out of 10, you know.
Yeah.
I like stars a lot, guy. Like, I'll try
great.
a 3-star thing, but I won't try
That's
a
it.
6 game.
Yeah,
I'll look at
weird.
the 6 game
That's
and I'll
right.
go, I know that's buggy, and I know none of the elements work together. That's just crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I personally don't think reviews need numbers. I think reviews with numbers people ignore all the words and they go, oh, I got this at the end, and that's all they really look for. And some websites have that number at the top of the page, so you don't even have to bother about hitting your scroll wheel or anything like that. It's great for something like Metacritic, where it is like getting them all together for a score.
Yeah.
But individual websites, you should be reading it.
So I get, it depends what you're looking for. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
I think you're going to go backwards and forwards forever.
I think so,
You
yeah,
disagree.
yeah, I think
so
you're
in
right.
conclusion, no one's right here. And this is just all our opinion about reviews.
Let us
our
know-
opinion on opinion.
Just watch the ENI reviews. Pretty much.
Let us know out of 10 what you thought of this chat.
We will
5 scribbles.
Yeah.
hopefully you'll like and subscribe.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Cool. See ya.